Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for staying this long. I'm the last one of the night. I hope I make it as painless as possible for everybody. Thanks for staying this long. It's really awesome to be down here. So my talk tonight is going to be on maximizing productivity with the Edge Dev Tools. I hope we're better at building dev tools and coming up with talk titles, because that's a pretty terrible one. But we're the ones that come up with Windows Server 2008, Release 2, 2019. So it's par for the course. I at least definitely work for Microsoft. Hi, I'm Brendyn. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a native New Yorker, so if you see me gesticulating a lot and talking loudly, everything is fine. I'm not worked up. That's just my people and how we do. I've been in Seattle for about 12 years now, so I'm pretty much a native Seattleite. I love the West Coast. I can't see myself going back at all. I love San Francisco. I'm a proud dog owner. This is Jackson, the Pugweiler. That's Pug plus Rottweiler, and if you're wondering how that came to be, I have some thoughts in my head as well. That's a little weird, the physical dynamics there. But it's a fantastic breed of dog. If you ever have a chance to get to have one of these little guys, they're fantastic. I'm the product lead on the Edge Developer Tools team, so I'm here representing a whole group of people's work back up in Redmond. It's a really cool team of people. I'm a long-standing member of the web dev community. In fact, my journey with the web dev community started in the late 90s, which is a horrifying thing to realize is now 2 decades ago, and some of you might not have even experienced the web development tooling world that I did back then. So just talking a little more about my journey. I started out with web development in high school. I went to a place where there were more cows than people, so discovering the web was a pretty fantastic thing for me. It was a whole world I couldn't even have imagined. And discovering that I could build for it was even more incredible, that I could help shape this thing. I kind of became addicted to the ability to not waste materials as you easily, course corrected and learned your way through how to be a creative on the web. And I loved it so much that I ended up going to school for it. I went to RIT in upstate New York. Go Tigers. I don't know if anyone here is from RIT, but I figure we're in San Francisco, so at least somebody's got to be. But I went there. This was what I would say a time period where we were coming out of the dark ages of web browser tooling. When I started in high school, there was like IE 5.5, Netscape 4.5 or 6. Notepad was your IDE. When I went to college, this is when Macromedia started coming out. They had Fireworks, they had Dreamweaver. Oh my God, that markup was just incredible that they would export out of those tools. It was heinous. But they were amazing because they started to automate a lot of these complex web development workflows that we were in. This is when I got exposed to ASP.NET, to JavaScript, ActionScript, VBScript, a whole bunch more, and the tools around them. In fact, I even was chatting with Paul Irish back there, and apparently jQuery's legacy now. I was in the same lab at RIT as John Ressig when he was creating jQuery, which goes to show how much time has gone on between when that first came out and how long I've been in this industry. After college, I decided I want to keep in the software and services world, so I joined Microsoft. And for the last 12 years, I've been working on Office Online, on this little IDE called Web Matrix. I don't know if anyone had a chance to use that back when it came out. It was a full stack tool for NuGet package management, database management, all those sorts of things. I worked on Azure Portal for a number of years as a software engineer and as a program manager, driving the frameworks that developers use to build upon Azure Portal and extend it for their services. And then after that, I joined Edge, where interestingly enough, a couple years ago, I came down here to SF-HTML5 to talk about the release of the Edge DevTools protocol, which is a port of the Chromium DevTools protocol that we implemented in the old Edge, Edge HTML Edge. And as many of you know, probably everyone at this point, Edge recently made the switch away from Edge HTML as a platform and into Chromium. And I have the honor and the pleasure of being the product lead now for that space. And every time we come out to events like this and we engage with customers like you, we get a very common dialogue that goes back and forth. Great, you chose Chromium. That's awesome for me. Mostly people say this. That's awesome for me, but what are you going to do next? Is that it for Edge DevTools? Are you done? And the answer is no. And so we kind of went back to the drawing board when we made the switch, because this is really an inflection point for us. The platform that the tools work against changed. It's Blink now. It's not Edge HTML. The customer base that we target is no longer just people that use Windows. It's every single web developer that uses Chromium, since we're part of that open source community now. So we really wanted to take stock and look around and figure out where we could add value. And as we look around, we are no longer in the tooling dark ages. There's a lot of complexity out there, but the tooling ecosystem has never been better. We have things like VS Code and React and TypeScript and GitHub and Node and all these things that help make complex web development workflows far easier. And yet, when we engaged a lot, people told us that it could be even better, that a lot of these tools address very specific complexities that exist in the modern web for the modern web platform, but they don't play well together. The tools themselves could be better. So we took a step back, and we think our opportunity as a team is really to build on open source greatness that already exists. Our switch to Chromium is sort of a testament to that. To look at how we can interconnect experiences across the end-to-end web developer workflow, and how we can keep putting customers like all of you at the center of what we do so that what we actually deliver into the open source world, into the web development tooling world, meets your needs. So, how do we conceptualize this end-to-end interconnected journey? We tend to think of it in three distinct phases. There is developing. This is when you're using your IDE in combination with your transpilers, with your linters, with your type systems, all the different utilities that come together to make you write better code before you even get to the step. What's next is debugging it. So debugging is when browser dev tools, browser extensions come together, best practice analyzers, things like Fiddler to help you intercept network traffic and customize your local development environment. They come together to help you find and fix bugs. And that's the step before you get to delivering the product out to your customers. This is when you turn to things like automation and test tools like Puppeteer and WebDriver to make sure your tests are run, integrating that with your CI/CD system to gate your releases, to make sure that the only things that release production are things that have made it through all of the sanity passes that you have. It's the hosting providers you have to deploy to. It's the analytics engines that you have to integrate to ensure the thing you built added value. So there's a ton of complexity across all these things. And when we talk about building on OSS, we want to look at the best tools that exist in each one of these phases, and then we want to talk about interconnecting them. So how can things from the delivery phase make debugging better? How can things from debugging make development better? And rather than talk up here and show a bunch of slides, I'm actually going to risk it all and just do a whole bunch of demos. So before I jump into that, I do want to add some caveats here. The team has been hard at work in the last year. We only announced in December of last year we're switching to Chromium, so we've been pretty hard at work at that. Turns out that's a massive amount of work to do to switch your browser engine. So we've been doggedly working on that. The beta came out just this past Tuesday, so go download it, hammer on it, let us know what you think. That is to say there are going to be bugs in this demo. If I hit a bug and I have to start it over again, trust that this is an early preview state of things. We just want to show our whole new cultural approach is we want to show things early and often. We want to be transparent. We want to put them out there. We've already tweeted about a number of these things at Edge DevTools if you want to follow us and see what we're doing. But I just want to call that out. At the very worst, at the very least, we'll get great feedback from all of you on how things could be better. So we're going to show these things here. So what we're going to show, in the develop phase, we're going to show how VS Code comes together with the browser dev tools and WebHint, our best practice analyzer, that suggests things that you can improve around accessibility, search engine optimization, things like that, how they come together to streamline the process of writing code and ensuring that it's polished. In the debug phase, we're going to look at the new Edge Chromium-based developer tools and some additions we're making to that, which we're going to be contributing and making open source up into Chromium. Then we'll look at how we're adding WebHint to every single browser that you use in order to streamline the process of optimizing your website once it's actually running in a browser. And then we'll look at the delivery phase, how the new Chromium-based Edge already works with WebDriver, how it's hooked up with Puppeteer, how there is a capability for you to integrate it with your CI/CD pipeline, so the same optimization workflows you have at every single phase of your web developer pipeline can be put into a CI/CD gate to make sure you don't release unless you meet them. And lastly, we'll take a look at the website or WebHint live site scanner, so you can trial out WebHint with zero setup if you'd like to. All right, so we're going to jump into me developing a sample app. This is something that me and my team have been working on. It's actually building off the To-Do MVC open source app. So I'm going to start here in Visual Studio Code. Now where I'm at is I just finished coding up a bunch of stuff. I feel like the UX is in a pretty good place. So what I'm going to do is press F5. This is going to open up debugging mode. So what you're going to see happen here is in VS Code now we have the Elements tool embedded directly inside of the IDE. What this provides is a live preview of your site. This is not a screenshot. You can actually come in here and type, add a to-do, right? In this case, I probably need to walk Jackson. I've been here for a while, so he's probably got to go to the bathroom pretty bad. So I'm going to add that to my to-do list. That's interesting. Looks like that's coming off as checked, even though I just added. Let me try another one. Vacuum living room. Nope, it's still checked. Okay, so it seems there's a bug in here, so I'm going to go ahead and open app.tsx. I know that this file is where most of the main interface of the site is, so I'm going to pop a breakpoint here. What you're going to see here is a seamless integration between debugging your styles, debugging your JavaScript. We heard when we went out and engaged with customers that you want to reduce the number of times you have to switch context between your apps and your web development workflow, and you really want to bring the insights that are best in browser debugging into your IDE in order to reduce the number of bugs you actually write and ship. So we put a breakpoint here. I'm going to go ahead and add another to-do item. We'll just say, fix this bug. Boom. And so it pops right open into here. You can see that we're getting the same state you would be able to get in the browser dev tools about the frame of the stack trace that we're paused in right now. It looks like nothing is wrong here, so I'm going to go ahead and step into the next call. Oh yeah, and right here, oh shoot, yep, I was debugging what the checked UX looks like and forgot to reset this to false by default. So I'm going to go ahead and step over this, remove our debugging here, we'll come back into elements, we'll refresh, make sure that that change is applied. We'll add one more breakpoint, or one more to do, which is, finish this demo well, let's hope. And boom, there we go. So we managed to fix a bug all without leaving your IDE. And the point is we can bring in natural ways. We don't want to be the Nokia 1020 where we take a camera and we take a phone and we jam it together and do a giant humped thing. I'm going to throw us under the bus on this a little bit. That was kind of a bad call. Cool phone if you ever had one, but definitely not pocketable, as they say. So, we want to take the best of these experiences and combine them in ways that are natural and actually respond to your feedback to us. So that's a flow of finding a bug and removing it. Now, the next thing I want to do is this to-dos header appears a little bit off-colored. I think I don't want it red. I'd like it a darker gray. So what we have in here is right from the Elements tool, you can now click on source files, and they'll open up right inside your IDE. So there isn't, again, this context switching where you have to deal with a transpiled file that doesn't actually match the source. You can jump back and forth between the two seamlessly. So one thing I want to show here, too, it's one of my favorite features to demo, is when this is split here, you can dock this down in the bottom. As I click through, let's say I want to find where the color is in here. I click this, and it will actually mirror my clicks along this as I go. So it helps navigate the file, so you always know where you are between the transpiled result of your original source and the source itself. So I'll come in here. I want to change this color. So these are the great Chromium dev tools that we all know and love. Since we switched to Chromium, we're embedding those directly inside the IDE. We'll adjust the color a little bit. We'll hit save. Come back to here. I'm pretty sure this is going to be good, but that looks way better. Yeah, that's way more legible. So go ahead and close this out now. So that's kind of the end-to-end workflow that's enabled when you embed the browser that you would normally launch and go navigate to, the style editing and debugging tools, and the debugger tools all in one seamless experience. So now that we're done debugging, I'm going to go ahead. Before I get out into my browser dev tools where I want to be able to check the sort of runtime web platform analysis of things, I'm going to first do a pass. There's a tool that I have called WebHint, and WebHint actually integrates seamlessly into the VS Code editor. We have an extension out there. You can go download this now. And one of the things it does is it surfaces different problems that are found within your site. These are best practices that there's a complexity of these. They're always evolving. They're always being added to. When we talk about accessibility, which I'm super excited to see us talking about tonight, the accessibility guidelines evolve just next year. There's going to be WCAG 2.1, which is going to add a number of zoom and text padding and other types of accessibility guidelines, and they're really hard to stay up to date with. So the goal of WebHint is to try to keep you up to date on those things by bringing the context for how you can improve right into the context you need the improvements in. So as an example here, I'm getting this red squiggly underline telling me something's wrong, and I promise you one feature we have here is you'll be able to just click this and do what I'm about to do. But when we come out here into the web browser now, and we just search for WebHint, Axe Keyboard, one thing that you can do is see exactly what is driving that hint. You can come and learn about it. You can dig deeply into why should this be fixed? It has to do with screen readers needing to be able to skip past frequently repeated content. You can jump out to the deep linked page, that explains more about why it's important and how to solve it. And I see on here that I need to wrap the part of my content that is the main part in a main section, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So as I'm editing here, you'll start to see too that these red squiggles disappear as I address them. This meta one, it's telling me that, oops, I forgot a dash in UTF-8, that should be UTF-8. This dialog down here, the browsers that I have configured that WebHint is aware of and is picking what rules to suggest to me based on. This dialog element doesn't exist in those browsers, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that anyway. That was debug code I left in there. The A class is telling me I need to put no opener, no refer. I know this one actually, if you specify target _ blank and it opens a page, that page will actually get a reference to the handle of the page that opened it, which is a security vulnerability if you don't intend for that to be the case. So I'm going to go ahead and add no opener, no refer here, and we'll again see these hints start to disappear both in the document itself and down here in the viewport. And this type of static linting is not only possible with HTML. We have this working for a number of other components of the web development journey too. We have TypeScript configuration that's working. You can come in here. This is telling me I should be targeting ES5, not ES 2015. Import helpers. Who doesn't want to reduce output size? We'll change that to true. Now, I could keep walking through all these, and you can leave it up to yourself how many you want to fix. WebHint sort of suggests to you that these are potential problems. You don't have to fix them. It doesn't break anything, but it lets you know. And this already, if you can see it, that was 6 bugs that I just fixed without having to even go out into and run my site. We want to try to reduce the number of bugs that developers write. That was another piece of feedback we heard when we went out and engaged about what problems could we help you solve. Now, the ambiguity of help me write fewer bugs, like there are a million possible solutions to that, of varying complexity. This is one we think is pretty simple and can help resolve a large number of bugs before you ship. So this is an example. This kind of rounds out the developer phase of how we're bringing insights from the runtime web diagnostics and the web platform into your IDE to help you write better code. So next, let's jump into the browser dev tools that we all know and love. So first out here, let's open the beta that we just released. Let's refresh this page. When you press F12, you actually get the same dev tools, again, that you're used to in Chromium or in Chrome. We've added our own themes, so for those of us that might be paying attention here, you'll notice that the look and feel of this is quite similar to the look and feel of VS Code. That's very much on purpose. We embedded some of the UX actually inside VS Code, and we believe that look and feel from icons to colors is very important for reducing cognitive load as you switch between different contexts. If you love your Chromium themes, we still have persisted those. It's our stated goal to not take away from Chromium. We think the Chromium tools are awesome. We wouldn't have switched to and vouched to switch to Chromium as a dev tools team on Edge if we didn't think they were the base standard out in the industry. In fact, the #1 piece of feedback we heard before we switched was just be like Chrome. So we did that. And now that product is released. So one of the really cool things I'm personally excited that we're bringing to the dev tools is localization. So the browser can actually be displayed in a number of languages right now. This is in Edge, this is in Chrome as well. But one of the things, and we're partnering with the Chrome team to upstream this right now into Chromium, is the ability to see your dev tools in the same language that your browser renders in. So here you can see the rest of the browser Chrome is all rendered in Japanese. Now when we come over here, and we press F12, you can see the dev tools are also now rendered in Japanese. So we got feedback from customers that upwards of 20% of web devs use their developer tools in a non-English language. When we talk about 15 million web devs out there, that's 3 million people that are being excluded right now from being able to use these because they don't speak English. So a big part of what we want to do initially with Chromium is widen the net of all the developers that can participate in web development, and we think localization is a really good first stab at that. The second thing we want to do, and I'm unfortunately not going to be able to demo that, but if you want to come out to our Twitter, and check it out, we're all going to be adding accessibility support. So we're focused on adding keyboard navigation, screen reader, high contrast and contrast ratio support to the developer tools. We understand this is a baseline. It's not enough to just add these sort of checklist items. You have to design products to be usable by people with different abilities from the start, but we think that something is better than nothing. And so we're working really hard now, again, with the Chrome team to upstream a whole bunch of changes. I think we actually have something like 130 commits out there right now that we're trying to get into Chromium. We have 100 plus that we've already done, majorly focused around adding accessibility support to all those major areas. Taking a little bit of a jump now away from sort of the foundational stuff we're trying to add, we're starting to experiment a little bit more too. One of the experiments that we're interested in is 3D views of information related to your site. Now, the web rendering engine has a number of components to it that actually make sense in 3 dimensions. You have the document object model, which is a nested tree. You have the CSS index, which is also a nested tree. You have things like the layout tree and the composition tree that the rendering engine processes your site through before it finally results in the pixels on your screen. You have the way that events bubble up through the DOM. So this is our first stab at just taking a 3D look at your website. And this, like I said, is the document object model. So here you can see it's actually the layers of your website shown. This is not that exciting on this one, but let's go to Twitter. It's actually kind of cool to see once you invoke the dev tools against a site that's moderately complex. You can start to see this very interesting 3-dimensionality emerge, and it's perfectly fine if you ask yourself, how the heck is this useful? Like, it's cool, nice. I can see like a Minecraft version of my site, but like, what can I do with this? That's a great question. We think right now this might be particularly good for finding nested complexity if you take a reliance on frameworks that generate a lot of DOM that you might not be aware of. But we also know that things like CSS index, because they're hard to conceptualize in your head when you're writing in a 2D sort of dimension, how a 3-dimensional thing could have an impact. So we're looking at things like the CSS index, how the composition layers are built up in the web engine, and things like that. So look for some cool new features coming out here. And the last one, this is a very tiny little thing, but it really bugged our dev team, and it speaks to the power of us working in Chromium now. I don't know if anyone has noticed this, but in Chrome, if you highlight some text and you hit Control F, that text doesn't get pre-populated into the search field. That drove our developers crazy, and rather than whine about it, they went out and actually just fixed it. So now when you hit Control F, text is pre-populated in the search field, and you can just search away for it without having to copy and paste. And again, sure, thank you. Yes, love it. I love that. Saved me like 1 second of misery 100 times a day. So the last thing I want to demo is one of my favorites. This is WebHint. Rather than demo WebHint running in Edge, we're going to demo WebHint running in Firefox. So we think, like you've seen in all these demos so far today, the web community, Firefox, Chrome, Apple, we've done an amazing job building web developer tools, and we want to build on top of those. So just like WebHint worked inside of the IDE to present hints, it also embeds inside of your browser. And again, this is available for Edge, for Chrome, and for Firefox. One of the things you can do is configure what hints you want to run against your website. You can configure what browsers you want to target. Basically, interoperability is a key part of this to make sure that your website can run well on all the browsers, on all the platforms. You can also do things like ignore resources that aren't yours. Say you take a dependency, as many do, on Google Analytics. You have the ability to say, when you analyze my site, don't look at problems around performance, around these sorts of things with third-party libraries that I have no control over. So let's go ahead and run a scan here. Nelly, our narwhal, is going to give you some helpful tips as you wait for your scan to finish. Now, I don't really want to wade through all the things I've done well. I mostly just want to see things I can improve. And WebHint striates the different hints into critical and sort of an FYI suggestion. And the red are the things that definitely need to be fixed. So here, let's take a look. This is telling me that my elements have insufficient color contrast ratio. As Victoria showed, that's a very important part of what we're trying to get into all of our dev tools. We saw the color contrast ratio support in Chrome tools. We saw it in Firefox. I know how to fix this one, and it looks like it's on this element. And I got to that because WebHint actually handily, when it comes to DOM-related things, lets you deep link right into the offending element. And I can see down here that that is, yes, I know that class. Okay, cool. we'll go ahead and fix that in a second, but I want to dig into this as well. This is telling us any form element has to have a label. That's a screen reader best practice. So let's just go right back into here and fix these issues. Let's close these down. Once again, we'll launch our Elements tool inside the IDE. So let's go and find this text again. Let's open it up where its source is. Let's change it to black. I think we know black on gray is a pretty good color contrast. And then I also know, because I've practiced this demo, where the string is that I need to change. So down here, this is the input. All we have to do here is add an ARIA label, and that will be enough, because screen readers will pick that up. So now if we come in here, we hit refresh, and we scan again. Once again, Nelly will give us some cool, helpful tips about the web, and then we'll see that all of the critical hints are now taken care of. So this is the same optimization insights that existed in the IDE inside VS Code brought into your browser context to help ensure that that same optimization and quality bar persists across your entire development workflow. Okay, and that red light is blinking angrily at me, so I'm going to try to speed up here. The last thing I want to demo is the delivery aspect. So we'll switch to command line here. One awesome thing we want to demo today is that things that are popular tools like Puppeteer and WebDriver actually even work now against Edge. So let's do npm test Puppeteer. Puppeteer is a JavaScript-based automation library that builds on top of the DevTools protocol to automate things within the browser. So what you're going to see here is it's going to run, it's going to pass tests. It runs in headless mode, so you don't actually see the browser pop up. It's sort of done behind the scene through the DevTools protocol. But awesome, the tests are passing. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Now if we do the same thing and we run with WebDriver, we'll see the exact same thing, but there are different experiences. WebDriver is built on the Selenium stack. It's driven primarily by Python. There are a number of languages it also works with. It has a bunch of bindings for JavaScript, has bindings for C#. So it is more of like a generalist web developer type of thing, whereas Puppeteer is meant primarily for JavaScript developers. And you'll see as it's automating the browser, we show a little box here that says your browser is being automated. Don't freak out about why things are popping up on the screen. It's not a ghost inside your computer. And you'll see that once it's done running, it also reports out that those 2 tests ran and they were successful. So great, now I know my tests are passing. I've manually tested it out. I've optimized it some. The next step would be, how do I take those optimizations that I made and ensure that as I configure my CI/CD system, I don't lose those. So if there are any potential changes because I'm in a staging or a production environment, that I'm not regressing. To help with that, we actually have an npm module for WebHint. So all you have to do is type hint, the URL you want, and it will run a local analysis right from the command line. Now this is telling me I don't have a default configuration set up, so it's choosing the default one for me. This is the browser again being automated behind the scenes through the DevTools protocol. There's a whole bunch of errors it's spitting out here. As I look through them, I see most of them have to do with production configuration of the server, and I'm not quite ready to take that step yet. So one thing I do want to show, though, is as part of that run, we spit out a pretty nice report that lets you just walk through and click through all the different hints, and this includes being able to learn why it's important and how to fix it, as I showed earlier on the WebHint site. And the last thing, the very last thing I'm going to demo here tonight, is the WebHint.io scanner. So let's say you're not bought into WebHint yet, you're not sure you want to onboard it into your IDE, into your debugging environment, or into your delivery. This is a zero setup way to go and try it out. So rather than put some other site under the bus here, let's throw our own team right under the bus. Let's scan WebHint itself. So this is going to do the exact same thing that you saw happen in the IDE, happen inside your browser DevTools, and happen in the command line. It's going to run that hint. It's offloading some of this asynchronously to Azure right now to do all the crunching, but it's going to return the exact same results. This is awesome in case you don't have the ability to access a site's code anymore, or you just are paranoid like me and want to make sure that the thing that was finally published actually matched what you had coded. This is one way to do a final sum, sort of checksum on your code. And the cool thing about WebHint.io is this is where you can get at all of our documentation on all the hints. This is an amazing educational resource just for our team to help us learn about the web better, and we're confident it will help you too. All right, so let's jump back into the presentation, and I'll wrap this up. Just as a reminder of what I just showed, we showed code working with WebHint and with the browser dev tools to help streamline your development process and the optimization of the code you write. We saw the new Chromium-based Edge browser dev tools, and we saw WebHint integrating with all the browser dev tools that are most popular out there, including Firefox, Chrome, and Edge. And last, we saw automation tools like Puppeteer and WebDriver working with Edge, the command line package for WebHint that lets you do CI/CD system integration and other types of automation, and the WebHint Live Scanner. So just a few final thoughts before I wrap up. One, everything we just demoed is released and open source. So please, we'd love your contributions. We'd love your feedback. That's the second thing. If you have any of it for us as you go about using these tools, please, if it's the browser dev tools inside Edge, click the smiley. If it's any other product, just tweet at us at Edge Dev Tools. We're here, we're engaging quickly, we're eager to hear from you and take your feedback into account. And then one last thing, because I couldn't resist. This is not a feature, so don't get too excited. And it's going to take a hot second to load here because this SVG is enormous. This is one of the coolest things. As I was researching my own history of the late 90s till now, I hit this on Wikipedia. For anybody that is a browser nerd, this is basically the family tree, the genetic tree of all browsers that have ever existed and all the forks of them and all those sorts of things. And what you see up here, this is Edge HTML. This will be the last time we keep this lineage going. We're switching now down to this, which started with Conqueror, forked into WebKit, and forked into Chromium now. So we will be proudly continuing this lineage. If you want to know where this link is, just Google or Bing. Search for internet history on Wikipedia, and you can pull that up. Ooh, I'm going to hear about that one later. So thank you very much. I appreciate your